everyone. Welcome to Lake Washington School District's Career Panel Series. My name is Rose Wu. I'm the College and Career Specialist here at Redmond High School. And we are privileged today to take a look at the careers in computer science and informatics from professionals who work in Salesforce, or Tableau by Salesforce, and Microsoft and Icaria. So let's see. In this session, we will hear about their education and career pathways, as well as their advice for you as high school students who are exploring computer science fields. So our session today is being recorded, and it will be posted on our website for you to access later on as well. And what I will do then is I will ask our panelists some questions, and then we will open up the floor for you all to ask questions. So now I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have with us Carla Wagner. She is the lead globalization engineer at Tableau from Salesforce. And this is Kalen Bicham. He is the product manager at Microsoft. And Andrew Wu, he's the software developer manager at Icaria. So I will start out with, I'll just ask you a general question, and then if you would each just kind of share with us. First question is, what is your current position, and how did school prepare you for your career?
With me first?
Yeah.
I work in software localization and internationalization, which means I help prepare software to be global ready, so that we make sure the code can be localized into various languages, and that dates and number formats, time formats, calendars, everything you can think of, text input works in every language around the world. And I kind of accidentally got into this field. I was just very passionate about foreign languages, and so from high school I started taking college classes in French and Chinese, and then I was a high school exchange student for a year. And in grad school I studied linguistics. I had no idea what I would do with this skill, and it's actually, I use my linguistics skills and passion daily in my job, so.
Awesome. So I guess I'm next. So I'm a product manager, as was introduced, for Microsoft, and specifically I sit on the Microsoft Create team. Before I go into that, product manager you can think of as quite literally you are managing a product, but it's more so the outcomes and the driving the outcomes to match business needs. And so specifically with my job, I work on the product Microsoft Create, which is a rather new product that debuted a few months ago, and that's geared towards users or people who are creators. So oftentimes the people you probably see on your devices who are content creators, whether it's on Instagram, Facebook, or even perhaps some small business owners, our job is to help supply and streamline that process for people who want to create their content. And specifically, I drive what's called the Learn and Grow initiative, which is teaching users how to create content. So for people who are new to that space, how can they use our tools to be empowered to create content? And that is quite different from education, because I had majored in what's called computing the arts, so an intersection of computer science, but also virtual reality, computer graphics. But I would say really it was that focus on users and focus on making experience for users and that narrative storytelling that comes with creating those virtual reality experiences. That I felt was what equipped my mindset for product management. So, that's a brief introduction for my role.
Yeah, I'm a software developer manager. I work for a company called Icaria. And what we do is we do a shopping comparison e-commerce site for American Express. Basically, you buy stuff on a website just like you would on Amazon, except with loyalty points. And what I do is software development, and I also manage developers. So for my education, I studied computer science and engineering at UW, and I kind of always was interested in computers. Growing up, I had a Apple IIe. I don't know if you guys know what that is, but it's a really old computer, but I learned how to program and use the computer just on my spare time, and those skills helped me get into the computer science program, and to this day, even though I'm a manager, I still use all the problem-solving skills and coding skills I've learned.
Thank you. Well, as you can see, our panelists come from a pretty broad background. And my next question is, what did you do after high school? I'm going to kind of backtrack.
When I graduated from high school, I actually went to high school in Iowa, and then I entered college right away after working at McDonald's to make money for my first year of tuition. And I double majored in Japanese and Chinese in college. At my age, I graduated from high school in 1985. I had no clue there was any access for me to do anything computer science related at that age. Just, there was, I mean, we were still, everything was DOS. There was before Windows, so yeah.
Well, but you did learn
It was
some
a long time.
languages.
Yeah, for me, I completed my high school degree in Texas. I'm originally from Dallas, Texas, but I also went straight to college at Yale, majoring in computing the arts, as I mentioned. But prior to that, I was actually interested in electrical engineering, so that was my first foray, and I guess you could say into a major. And I think after taking the first few classes of that, I realized it wasn't really for me. But I think that's part of the process of dealing with that ambiguity of naturally of finding where your passions align. And I think when I got to my sophomore year and I was able to do a bit more exploration, I was leaning to the arts. And I guess before I go more into that, I should say for my entire life, I've always been interested in this intersection of business, art, and technology, and it was really about finding that nice, happy medium. And going into the sophomore year, I think exploring this new degree that was called Computing the Arts at the time, it was where you're allowed to pitch, in addition to computer science, one of 5 concentrations, whether that's music, architecture, art history, visual arts, or I think the last one would be film studies. But I chose art in this case, which is what allowed me to focus more on virtual reality and building computer graphics. And so that was pretty much my course of study. But also in that time, I had the opportunity to study abroad in Japan. Granted, it was under English program, but also studied Spanish. And that passion of learning new languages even carries to today, because I'm learning Japanese currently outside of work. So those are some things I do. Yeah.
So after high school, I graduated high school in Spokane, Washington, and then I went to University of Washington for college. Been here in the Puget Sound area ever since. Studied computer science and engineering, and as part of that program, I did a internship, or you could also call it a co-op. It was a 9-month full-time job experience with a local company which no longer exists, but work experience while being in school was very helpful. And after that, graduated with my degree and started working in the industry. So pretty simple career path for me.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to Carla. So you studied, you said Chinese and Japanese, and then how did you enroll in a certificate program, or did you go further?
Well, after my 4-year degree, I really wanted to move here and attend the University of Washington for a graduate degree in linguistics. So I kind of took a gap year, and I worked as a Japanese interpreter for an airline for about a year, and then so I enrolled in the linguistics department and finished my master's, and I worked as a Japanese TA in grad school, teaching first and second year Japanese at the University of Washington. So when I graduated with my linguistics degree, I still had no clue what to do, and I took a job with a Japanese company in Seattle, like a lumber export company. And then I felt, they gave me flowers on Secretary's Day, which I kind of thought, I didn't get a master's to be a secretary. Although my mom is a secretary, it's I very respect, but I wanted more. And a friend of mine told me that Microsoft was looking for people who spoke Asian languages to help test software. And so I applied and got a contract position for a year. And a year later, I was full-time and have been doing that ever since for a variety of companies. So, yeah.
Okay, wow, that's very interesting. Actually, this leads to my next question, which was if you could share with us your career pathway. I know you've already done it, but I'd like
Yeah.
to hear more. If you.
Oh, yeah.
wanna-
Yeah, like I said, I just applied, at the time it was software test engineer position. And this, I picked up a book on software globalization and another book on software testing, and I just crammed and I took an interview and I got hired, and I just learned on the job, and I started taking computer programming classes on weekends or evenings myself. Yeah, and then worked at Microsoft for about 9 years, and then I worked at Amazon for about 7.5, and then I started working for Tableau. I've been there for 9.5 years so far.
So you pretty much
Yeah.
self-taught.
Yes, I'm pretty self-taught. I learn from the mistakes that we've made in the product, and I never forget an error. And so,
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so for me, it's been an interesting path. During my time as undergraduate, I actually did start exploring financial technology. This is my first foray into professional world. So I actually interned starting off as a data analyst at JP Morgan Chase, which is one of the bigger banks, so to speak, in the world. And the opportunity there I had was to work with some of the existing analysts and some UX engineers and other software engineers to try to pioneer a solution for managing bank accounts properly. And then second, I managed to, thankfully, I was able to return to the same space the following summer to work as a software engineer. Granted, this is kind of the time when the pandemic started to hit, so a lot of the experience was condensed. But it was, during the internship, I kind of had a nice taste of what remote work was like at the time. And for that experience, I had the opportunity to work with creating a small mobile app from start to finish. Granted, it is mainly a draft of the app that would ultimately be carried on by full-time employees, but it was to assist people who were at a local museum for educational purposes. And I know it's quite related to my current job, but I think one of the things that stood out to me, of course, the technical experience, but really it's the opportunity to really strategize and work with other people and carry a product from start to finish. There are a lot of parallels that resonated with me, but I wanted to do more than just code. And then actually that kind of leads to the next part is that I'm currently an MBA student, actually. And part of becoming an MBA student was to make that pivot to a more business-oriented role, but still, very much fundamentally rooted in the technology industry. And through that experience, that was from 2020 to 2021, so still during the pandemic, I went through application processes, and Microsoft was one of the places that stood out to me because there was this intriguing space that was still at the intersection of technology and arts, but still that fine pivot into business. And then thankfully, I was able to be welcomed into Microsoft, and I've been working with the company for the past almost 2 years, which is crazy to think. But it's definitely been a blessing, and that's where I've been right now. And I'm hoping to still grow more in this capacity and eventually hopefully explore the gaming industry at some point. So, yeah.
Yeah, so while I was a student, I started working in computer labs to help students. And then in my internship, my co-op, I got hired by a company called GeoWorks, and my job was to create applications for a smartphone. It was the first smartphone that probably in the world, and it hit Europe. I don't think it ever got sold in the United States. It was from Nokia, and it was kind of this clamshell thing. It was like 1996, so a long time ago. And we did application programming in assembly language, which is pretty low-level language. After that, I worked for InfoSpace, which was a company that's kind of one of the poster childs for the dot-com bust. Many of you may not be familiar with that, but the whole tech industry hit kind of a bubble where everyone was pouring money into tech, and stock market prices went crazy, and then it crashed, and everyone in tech was fearing for their jobs. But that's when I was working for InfoSpace doing web development, and the group I was a part of got spun off into another company, which is Icaria, where I'm working in right now. But while I was working in Icaria, I took a stint to work for a company called Moxie and a company called Point B, doing different software development jobs. And now I'm back at Icaria at this time doing development management, which is a whole different kind of experience on mentoring and coaching and helping developers in their career path.
Thank you, Andrew. So, as you've heard, our panelists, they've all kind of done a little bit of pivoting, shifting. I'm wondering, what were your reasons for changing jobs? Was it mainly for just to move up in terms of promoting in the position, or just your reasons for job switches?
Well, I'm not very, some people change jobs every 2 years and move up the ladder very quickly. I'm very, I stick in my jobs probably longer than I should, although I'm very happy where I am, but it usually turns out I find a manager that I just can't deal with anymore, and then I start looking. Because as long as I'm happy and I'm learning new things every day, I just don't see much need. I've changed jobs within these companies around when I wanted to learn something new, but to change actual companies, it's usually something where I'm just burnt out. I need to change the space.
Yeah, I guess for me, since it's actually product management is my first job, so I haven't quite changed jobs yet, you could say. But I guess if you do compare internships, that was certainly a pivot. I think for me, it was really just about finding what aligned best with how I wanted to contribute in some sense to society through my career, but also like are my aligned passions with that work. And I think our internships, mark points at time which I wanted to pivot and explore things. So to me, I view it as really an educational journey, because you're always learning something new if you do invest your years in a position, and maybe you want to go to the next exciting tech or next exciting field. And that's completely okay. And I think that might be the direction I may take in the next few years. But like I said, this is my first position, and I've only been at it for almost 2 years. So there is a good chance maybe I'll pivot, but I think at least short term, I want to stay in the field of product management, or the role of product management, but in the field of tech, exploring different technologies. And that, for me, that's the natural point of I think, transition for jobs for me.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the first things you got to do when you're beginning your career is to determine what are your values. Mm-hmm. What is it that you want in life? And if you want to make a lot of money, maybe, job switching, climbing the ladder is for you. But if you want to have good work-life balance, and you have other priorities besides work, then you would focus on jobs that give you that work-life balance. And you still enjoy your job, and but you're able to do the things you want outside of work. So there's different, priorities, and you've got to decide that in your career path. For me, I've always chosen the work-life balance, but also, so just like, sorry, what was your name again?
Carla.
Carla was saying, it's perfectly fine to stay in a job for a long time if you're happy with, especially the people you work with, your manager, and you're still learning. For me, I moved to different jobs when I stopped learning, and it was no longer interesting. So that's one of the things in the tech career, is that you should always be learning, you should always be curious. And if you're not learning, if you're not growing, you're going to fall behind. And that's one of the first things I look for when I'm hiring people. Besides, aptitude, is how curious are you? How much are you willing to learn? Because truthfully speaking, no one can know everything, and technology moves fast, which is what makes this industry quite interesting. So if you're in a job that you're no longer progressing, you no longer have something new to learn, I think it's time to move to another job. That happened to me while I was working for Icaria, and I needed to find more growth opportunities. And so I was able to do that. And then after working in a couple places, I got the experiences I needed, and those experiences that I learned in those intervening years became very valuable coming back to a company that I'd worked for before. And now, even though I've been at this company a total for about 15 years, I feel like I'm still always learning and still growing. So I think for me, work-life balance and being interested and learning are the factors that keep me in a job or would cause me to pivot to another job.
Thank you. Actually, I'm going to ask Andrew this next question, and then we'll go this way. Is what skills and talents do you need to do your job well?
Yeah, so I'd reiterate one more time that curiosity is probably the first thing. The interest to learn and to kind of deep dive into something that you're not familiar with. Another factor which is equally as important is problem-solving skills. People are afraid of AI, ChatGPT. They're going to take over the tech jobs. Actually, they'll take over the stuff that's boring and not interesting. But the things that are interesting, the hard problems, the things that require a curious mind, until we get to artificial general intelligence, I don't think you need to worry about that. So that's what I look for. I look for someone who's curious. I look for somebody who has problem-solving skills. If you have these two attributes, you can succeed in the tech industry. Even if you don't have, let's say you apply to the University of Washington and you don't get in the CS department, there's still a career path. As long as you have these attributes, you can succeed in the tech industry.
Thank you. That's actually quite, it's good to hear that, right? I think we've heard so many students who applied to UW's, yes, and were declined and felt like, oh, they didn't have a way to go on. But it's so good to hear that. Important to have that curious mindset that you're always wanting to learn, and just work on that problem-solving skill, which I'm sure a lot of your classes are making you really try working on these skills as well. So, Keelan, what skills and talents do you feel are important for your job?
Yes, no, absolutely. So I definitely concur with everything Andy said. I think those skills are certainly important for product management just as much, since it's rooted in the technology industry. I would also add ambiguity, being able to deal with that, because oftentimes in product management is very centered around leadership. And I should describe the core of what product manager kind of works with. You work with engineers, you work with designers, you work with data analysts, and in my case, I work with also content writers who write our content for the site. And ultimately, it's up to me and a lot of my peer product managers to convey a vision and to be able to capitalize on that vision and lead it through periods of ambiguity. And that ambiguity is, perhaps the market or the way your particular field is evolving over time. And so really be able to stick with that and find clarity in that space and lead your team through that is really vital. A secondary aspect is communication is really important. For me, it's a lot of my days are filled with a lot of meetings because I have to make sure all of I call these people, we call them stakeholders. Because also they're ones who have stake in the ultimate objective for the team or for the product that we're managing. And be able to communicate really quickly and efficiently and be able to pitch ideas and secure the alignment and make sure everyone is on the same accord with your ideas and with the team initiatives, that's incredibly important. Because things move very quickly, the technology industry is also evolving, and it's important that we respond to it. A third one I would also add is being very data-driven and customer-driven, because ultimately you're building these products to serve someone, and ultimately you should be sensitive to their needs and what their sentiments are around your product and what are your competitors doing. And so ultimately it's the job of the product manager to assess, okay, what are my competitors doing? What are some things that we can do to be a greater differentiator in this space? And that's really where I think the critical thinking and also being in tune with your customers really matters. And I think if you build that sense of empathy really quickly, that leads to a very successful product manager that's leading to good outcomes. And outside that, I would also just add just being an effective team member and being willing to be what we call scrappy. And that term is really used to convey that notion that, yes, you are a product manager, but you don't have a hierarchical sense of leadership or authority over your teammates. You're in the fields with them. You're working with them to help build this product and carry it forward. And it's ultimately up to you to step up where there might be areas that need your support. So by being scrappy, doing whatever it takes to get something done. So it means working with designers on designs or working with engineers. And if you have the coding wherewithal to be able to do that, to get something past a deadline. I'd say have that mindset of just ambition and willing to help and to be on the sidelines of your teammates, not just leading them, is really important. So those are 3 things I would add to what Andy's already said. But I think if you have those, you'll be really successful in the role of product manager, but also just generally in leadership roles, period, I think in the tech industry. So,
Thank you.
yeah.
Well, they already said a lot of the things I would say. And additionally, I love to look. I love the candidate who's passionate, who's just really eager to learn new things, because technology is always changing. You know, you may think you're like a pro in one language, and the next thing you know, you're told to like learn a completely new technology, things that my daughter takes for granted now didn't exist when I was her age, So yeah, just always striving to learn new things and passionate. You have to find that one thing you're passionate about, whether it's art or in my case, language and linguistics, or if it's just coding, or if you're just an OCD person, you like everything structured. You got to tune into what your passions are, and you can always apply anything to a tech career. You don't have to be the best coder, but I think learning coding helps in any job, whether it be just scripting for small, to make some mundane tasks faster and things like that. It's always helpful, but there's a lot of different careers in the tech field, and it's not all just software development. But yeah, and then I think another thing I was thinking was being able to prioritize. When you come to work, you may have like an overwhelming number of emails or Slack messages or whatever chat your company is using, and then you've got maybe some defects that you have to work on, and you have a release calendar. Everything's like date driven, and so you really have to kind of see the wide view of what you do, how it impacts your team, your company, your products, and just be able to understand what should I focus on first, and also know how to ask for help when needed. You don't have to know everything by yourself. Working as a team, like you said, is really important. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Next question. What is a typical day like for you? Or is there a typical day?
Yeah. Well, I kind of start the same because I'm drinking my coffee and going through messages, emails and Slack, and looking through our defect tracking system and seeing if there's any like work items that I need to finish. And I kind of create a prioritized task list for every day in the morning, and kind of check them off. So like I said, prioritization. Somebody might be screaming for help, but I might say, can I answer you tomorrow? But if it's like a real fire drill, I'll tell other people, okay, I'm going to answer you later. So just start out by just prioritizing what I'm going to do. And yeah, after that, it's different all the time. So.
Yeah, no, for me, it's definitely the same thing, because there's always a different, because everything, cascades or leads to a bigger, so to speak, project, and I usually extend to weeks or months. But within one day at least, so if I take a snapshot of this experience, it starts off very similar. I'll check my emails, because oftentimes I'll just get so many messages from many different partners I work with, or some of the clubs I'm a part of, just to make sure I filter those out and have a sense of like what I need to do for the day. And also check, but that's also in parallel to a lot of the direct messages I receive, where it's through the night, because I work with partners in Australia and India. So sometimes, like, if we can't maintain calls, we usually communicate, respectively through the messaging and respond to each other when we're awake. So it means just, managing those communications And then usually, as far as what I do for the day, that's really dependent upon like I usually keep a written notebook of the things to do that I've accumulated, and I'll always check that and see what I can do for the day. Beyond that, once I've done that preliminary stuff, I'll usually have a few meetings. So actually before that, I'll also check accessibility because I'm the team owner and leader for accessibility. So I'll check to make sure, see, are we still compliant? Are there any incoming accessibility bugs that our testers are reporting? And if there are, I'll make note of that to the team and communicate that to them. Hey, we have these bugs. We're going to start filtering them in for our next sprint, or essentially this period of time, which will work and dedicate engineering time and effort to fixing said issue. And beyond that as well, I might also meet and review some of the data that's coming in. So seeing where customers are perhaps clicking on our site, where how many people are being referred to our proper channels to actually experience our content. And then based on that data, I'll assess, and this, like I said, this depends on weeks or months, either before or after, a set of hypotheses to see, like, okay, are we meeting these deadlines? Are we meeting our goals? And then maybe reposition what we're, and then meet other stakeholders perhaps in the same day to discuss, okay, this is what the data is telling us, what should we change about our site? What new experiments can we run? And then usually that's kind of the thing that kind of repeats itself quite often, but, and then I also usually will set up and plan new meetings. If I know in response to data or in response to other conversations I may have with some stakeholders, and so that's pretty much the day. And then the end of the day just wraps up with me just making sure I have check my notebook notes and see if what I've completed, and then try to schedule time for the next day to make sure I'm ready for that. And yep, but like I said, it's a long-term process, but that's just like a snapshot of one day, and the pattern of that differs each day, each week.
Yeah, for me, it's pretty simple and actually a little bit boring, but sometimes our days are boring, but that's part of life. So I get up, I have coffee, and then just like everyone else has said, I check my emails, catch up with communications, and one of the funny things about the tech industry is, and I was surprised by this later on, is you do a lot of writing. Even though I'm a developer, I do a lot of reading and writing. So don't discount your lit classes or your English classes. They're important. Even if you're learning speech, communications, if you're in debate, to be able to convey your ideas and your thoughts, that's what I do for a lot of my day, is I assimilate information, I'm reading, and then I'm responding and making sure my team members understand what's going on. So I also write code, but I don't do as much as I used to because I'm a manager. So what I do, I review other people's code, and I give them suggestions, I give them help. I also spend time with each one of my direct reports. We call them one-on-one sessions, where I provide some mentoring and coaching on how they can be better in their jobs, and also provide a career path. How can you grow? I actually enjoy this part of my job quite a lot. And one of the things that I try to minimize in my day are meetings. I actually have one meeting per day. That's our stand-up meeting. Try to keep it to 10 minutes, but sometimes it goes to 15. That's okay. But if it starts going to 30, it's yeah. Anyways, so, and then I'll have other meetings throughout the day, but that pretty much sums up my work day. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so communications, prioritizing, problem solving, teamwork, all those are very important skills, and I'm sure you all are practicing that as well in your classes. Okay, next question. What advice would you give to students who want to go into this field? Computer science or informatics?
Like I said, follow your passion, and you'll probably find a niche in the tech industry that can overlap with your passion. The thing I wish I hadn't done, which I didn't do till after I got into the tech field, because this wasn't available was I wish I had learned more about coding and scripting earlier. That would have probably helped me propel my career, but I don't code as much as, like a software engineer, but I do have opportunities and I always enjoy it. It's just like every time I start, it's like I have to learn again because I have big gaps. So I think, definitely, even if you don't have to be the best coder, but I think it's good. It helps you to communicate with people who do code, which would be important even if you're not in the engineering role. But I would have done more of that, and if I could have.
Thank you, Carla.
So.
That was helpful, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me on the fundamental level, I think just it applies to any field. Really, just find comfort in that sense of ambiguity. I know that's the theme, of course, product management and applying that to markets, but it's also something that we confront within ourselves, right? Will be times which you face, certainty in what you want to do, and this goes along with what just Carla just said, finding your passion, but really engage in that time to be introspective. Think about where your passions lie, but also be curious and explore. Because there is excitement in sometimes going into the unknown and finding some passion that you may not have ever realized you really wanted. And for me, it took electrical engineering, computer science, arts, and then now product management. It's still in the tech industry and still within the same interests, but there's that sense of exploration was what I think allowed me to find the sense of fulfillment in the journey to my role. And like I said, that thing that can be applied to any field. But now, as far as I think product management itself, I would also just say, of course, like I said, it's very rooted in the tech, and it's not necessarily required that that you need to know how to code per se, but it does help. It does help with if you do know code or if you do know some basics of that to help build that rapport and build understanding with engineers, since they actually are the biggest cohort that you tend to work with as a product manager, and they're some of your biggest stakeholders, since they're ones who will drive and ultimately bring your product to fruition. Beyond that, I would say really being ambitious, being curious, being very empathetic in your purpose. Those are things that I think are really critical to be good at product management, but just in life. So those would be the takeaways I would have for folks who are interested in that career position, but also tech.
Yeah, those are all good points. The thing about the tech industry that's so interesting and amazing is that there's room for all kinds of people and all kinds of skills. If you're an introvert and you really like sitting down and coding, then there's room for you. But this is the stereotypical software engineer. But just like Kaylin was saying, if you have an interest in art, and if you have an interest in some creative aspects, but you have some background in tech, problem solving skills, you can apply those in different ways. Because what we need today is how do we apply technology to solve real problems. And you can't just do that by coding. You have to be a well-rounded person. You have to know what are the problems. You have to be creative. You have to be curious. You have to ask hard questions like ambiguity. And I think the theme is that you got to be willing to dive deeper into areas that you're interested in and develop an interest in other things. So let's say you like to code, but you don't know anything about the business side of things. Well, you should learn about why it is that things happen on the business side. Why are certain decisions made? And one of the things that I think was brought out is to be empathetic. And one of the big things about working in the tech industry is working in teams. Probably in school today you have group projects, and you might detest the group projects because I can do it by myself, or I don't want to carry for other people or whatever. But it's the same when you go to work. You're going to be in a team, and you have to learn to work with people. But when you learn how to be empathetic, when you learn how to, see yourself in someone else's shoes, you learn to communicate, because a lot of the problems come from misunderstanding one another. If you can be this kind of person, then you're going to be very useful. You'll do great in the tech industry. A team player, empathetic, and always learning.
Okay, thank you. Well, now we're going to take questions from our audience. Feel free, if you have any questions, just raise your hand, and you can address your questions to a specific speaker or to just general question to all. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't know what you're questioning, but how did you apply your art experience into your career?
Yes, great call, and it's Kaylin. Yeah, no worries. So our experience, right? I think so. Of course, the fundamentals of my degree, I did initially have to focus on basics of drawing and visual thinking, as we call it. So understanding color patterns and how colors mesh together to form impactful and compelling experiences. And that eventually, of course, evolved in virtual reality, right? So where now it's adding third dimension and having to articulate and build experiences that are compelling, but also they're also immersive. And I think it's not so much the physical application of art, I think that's being applied to product management, at least in this particular area which I'm in. But I think for me, when I work with my designers, I'm able to kind of speak their language, because our site and the design philosophy behind it, is based on a lot of those fundamentals like visual thinking, and I'm able to kind of give proper artistic critiques that are beneficial and constructive criticisms that help us build the product further. And that helps. I think that form of thinking, the mindset that comes with it, is what has helped me, I think, work better and more efficiently with our designers explicitly. I hope that answers your question. Yeah, welcome.
Art is a huge deal.
Yeah.
For something to be usable or pleasant, or another word that we like to use is delightful, it makes a big difference when you go to a website and you're like, "Oh, this is really beautiful. This is really nice." Or you see something that's like an engineer just did it, and it's just a bunch of stuff on the screen. It's like, how do I use this thing? And design is a huge part of technology. I mean, it's like, why is Apple so successful? It's because they're not just engineers; they're also applied art, right? So we need creative, artistic people in the tech field. And in product management, and in all kinds of interfaces, and all kinds of just colors, fonts. Design is a huge deal in the tech industry.
Yeah, and with art, having artists tend to look at things from a different angle, different point of view, and we really need that diverse feeling. In order to innovate, you need people to think of things in creative ways and see things from different perspectives. So, yeah.
Yes.
So I know you previously talked about soft skills, but I was wondering what kind of hard skills would you kind of recommend someone who's going to enter kind of like careers before they enter that career, like after college, for example? What kind of like skills should they already have, like what kind of foundation?
I would definitely coding of some, either a scripting language or an actual computer programming language, because even me not being in a job that demands coding, when I go to an interview, I am interviewed in coding, even if it's just pseudocode, just to demonstrate that I understand the logic of how things work. So, yeah, I would definitely suggest that you practice coding. And people who aren't willing to code don't tend to do as well.
Yeah, I would say for product management, writing, of course, like so don't underestimate these English classes. It's really important to be able to write concisely, but also have a compelling point, and making sure your audience, which is your stakeholders or even other teams you might be working out with outside your team, that it's understood what your intentions are. And then also be able to do solid reasoning. So be able to supply the right data to back your claims or back why you think this particular motive or not motive, but initiative should be adopted by the team. Another one I would also say I'm not sure if you classify it necessarily as a hard skill, but perhaps public speaking. It is really important that you get comfortable with being able to speak in front of your peers, but also in front of teams which you're meeting for the first time. That's the other thing, of course, I'm still growing in, but it's really important that you are able to do so and do it concisely, in the sense that you're getting, once again, for the same reasons that you're writing, you're getting your point across. Beyond that, I think those are the two hard skills, but a lot of them are really soft skills that I think you build from any other positions that are related to leadership, like whether it's business operations or consulting. I think a lot of the others are soft skills. But I would say it does also help, of course, is maybe having some statistical knowledge as well. So whereas basic statistics or basic mathematics to be able to deduce things from data, that's also
Yeah.
pretty